Welcome to Neville Explanation. If you're here, you're probably searching for something more than motivation. You're looking for a deeper understanding of how your thoughts, beliefs, and assumptions shape the life you experience every day. On this channel, we explore Neville Goddard's timeless teachings in a simple, practical way that you can actually apply to your own life. So, take a moment to put aside distractions, stay with me until the end, and let's discover how one simple shift in the way you think can completely change the way you live. Your reality is not something that simply happens around you. It is shaped through you, through the assumptions you hold, the identity you accept, and the state of consciousness you occupy. The moment you begin to doubt your chosen assumption, you unknowingly hand your power back to appearances. Over time, many of you have learned the principles of imagination, the feeling of the wish fulfilled, revision, inner conversations, and living from the end. You understand the techniques. You know how to create a mental picture and how to feel as though your desire is already yours. Yet some of you still wonder why the change has not fully appeared in the physical world. The reason is not that the methods are wrong, nor that you are incapable or undeserving. The missing piece is much deeper. It is the ability to remain in the chosen state after you have entered it. Anyone can feel successful for a few moments during meditation. Anyone can imagine a beautiful future before sleep. Anyone can experience a powerful emotional moment where everything feels possible. But true mastery comes from staying there when your surroundings seem unchanged. The real secret is not merely entering the state of your desire, it is making that state your natural place of being. Think about how many times you have felt the reality of your dream. Maybe for a few minutes, or even an entire evening, you felt like the person who already had everything you wanted. You felt confidence, peace, and certainty. In those moments, you were not hoping for your desire. You were experiencing it internally. But then morning arrived. You opened your eyes, looked around, checked your phone, searched your circumstances for proof, and wondered if anything had changed overnight. When the outside world appeared the same, a small doubt entered. Nothing has changed yet. I am still in the same situation. My life still looks the same. Without realizing it, you stepped out of the state you had entered. Not because you stopped believing completely, but because you returned to the familiar version of yourself. You moved from the state of already having into the state of waiting to receive. And whatever state you consistently occupy becomes the foundation from which your life is expressed. If your dominant state is expectation, you continue experiencing reasons to wait. If your dominant state is lack, you continue finding evidence of lack. The world reflects the identity you repeatedly accept. This is why persistence is so important. To understand this fully, you must understand what a state really means. A state is not just an emotion that comes and goes, nor a temporary mood created by a good day or a bad day. A state is a complete way of experiencing yourself and your life. It includes your beliefs, your assumptions, your automatic thoughts, your expectations, and the things you consider normal. Imagine your consciousness as a huge house with countless rooms, each room representing a different version of yourself. There is a room where you identify with struggle, limitation, and fear. And in that room, your thoughts naturally match struggle. Your decisions come from fear, and your expectations are shaped by what is missing. But there is another room where you identify with abundance, confidence, love, and success. And in that room, your thoughts are different, your reactions are different, and your entire perception of life changes. Both rooms exist as possibilities. The question is not whether these states are available. The question is which room you are choosing to live in. You are always occupying a state. You are never outside of one. The only choice you have is deciding which state becomes your home. Many people treat their desired state like a place they visit occasionally. They enter it during meditation, feel wonderful for a short time, then return to their old identity when the practice ends. But visiting is different from living. To truly change your life, you must stop treating your desired reality as a temporary experience and begin to see it as your new normal. You move into that state. You become familiar with it. You think from it. You respond from it. You no longer see success as something far away. You see it as the identity you already occupy. Your outer world eventually has to reflect the inner home you consistently choose. One of the most powerful moments to practice this is immediately after waking. Before you touch your phone, before you check messages, before you allow the outside world to remind you of old circumstances, there is a small window where your mind is still calm and open. In those first moments between sleep and full awareness, your assumptions have incredible influence. Use those moments consciously. Take just a few seconds and decide, what state am I choosing today? Then feel yourself as the person who already has what you desire. Do not force it, do not struggle, do not create a complicated ritual. Simply return to the feeling that this is who you are now. You are not becoming someone someday in the future. You are accepting a version of yourself that already exists within consciousness. 30 seconds of true alignment can change the direction of your entire day. When you begin your morning from the state of fulfillment, you create momentum. It becomes easier to remain there because you are no longer trying to reach the state from a place of doubt. You started your day already connected to it. Your morning assumption becomes the foundation for everything that follows. Throughout the day, you may still encounter moments where old thoughts return. You may see circumstances that appear opposite to what you desire. You may feel tempted to react to appearances. But remember, falling out of the state does not mean you have failed. The practice is not perfection. The practice is returning. Every time you notice yourself slipping back into the old identity, gently choose again. Return to the version of yourself who already knows. Return to the feeling of fulfillment. Return to the state you have decided to call home. Because the power was never in the outside world changing first. The power was always in you, remaining faithful to the inner reality you have chosen. You will fall out of the state sometimes. That is completely natural. Remember, you are transforming deeply established patterns of consciousness that have been built over years, sometimes even decades. These old patterns have become familiar pathways in your mind, and new patterns require repetition before they become your natural way of thinking and being. The old identity does not disappear instantly. It will try to return because it knows the familiar environment. It may appear quietly, through a conversation, a situation, or a simple thought that reminds you of the person you used to be. Someone may say something that awakens an old belief. You may encounter a circumstance that appears to completely oppose what you have chosen to believe. Your logical mind may immediately react and say, "Look, this is proof that nothing has changed." Sometimes an old thought can feel so convincing, so familiar, and so powerful that you follow it without even noticing. Before you realize it, you have walked back into the old version of yourself. But this is not failure. This is part of the process. The only real mistake is noticing that you have returned to the old state and deciding to stay there. The practice is not about never having an unwanted thought. The practice is about becoming aware of it and choosing again. That is the entire process. Notice when you have left the state and return. That is all. Imagine yourself as the guardian of your own consciousness. You are not someone who tries to stop every single unwanted thought from appearing, because that would create exhaustion and struggle. Instead, you are the one who decides which thoughts receive your attention and which ones are allowed to pass. A doubt may appear at the door of your mind. You notice it. You recognize it. You say, "This is the old version of me trying to return." And you do not invite it inside. You do not argue with it. You do not spend hours trying to prove it wrong. You do not analyze every reason it might be true. You simply choose not to give it a home. You turn your attention back toward the feeling of fulfillment. You return to the state where you already have what you desire. You come back home. This simple practice of noticing and returning again and again is how a new identity becomes permanent. It is not created through one dramatic decision or one perfect moment of belief. It is created through thousands of small choices where you gently return to who you have decided to become. Now, I want you to understand something extremely important about your inner conversations, because this is one of the biggest keys to remaining in your desired state. There is a voice inside your mind that is constantly speaking. It has been there for as long as you can remember. It comments on your life, judges situations, remembers the past, worries about the future, and creates an endless stream of thoughts throughout your day. This inner conversation is not meaningless. It is either supporting the reality you want to experience, or it is keeping you connected to the reality you are trying to leave behind. Listen carefully to your thoughts during ordinary moments, not only during meditation or when you are intentionally practicing manifestation. What does your inner voice say when you are not paying attention? Does it say, "I hope this works"? When is it finally going to happen? It has been too long. Maybe I am doing something wrong. What if this never happens for me? Or does it sound like, "It is already done. I am grateful. This belongs to me." I love how naturally everything is unfolding. The first voice belongs to the old state. It is the voice of waiting, uncertainty, and searching for proof. The second voice belongs to the person who is already living in the feeling of having. Most people misunderstand inner conversation. They think it is only a reflection of their state, but it is much more than that. Your inner dialogue is one of the forces that keeps you inside that state. The state creates the conversation, but the conversation also strengthens the state. They constantly influence each other. If your mental background is filled with thoughts of lack, fear, and delay, it becomes difficult to remain in the identity of someone who already possesses what they desire. So the practice is simple. Listen. Do not judge yourself. Do not criticize yourself. Simply become aware. Ask yourself, is this the voice of the reality I want to live in, or the reality I am leaving behind? When you notice the old voice returning, do not fight it aggressively. Do not create tension by forcing yourself to think differently. Simply redirect your mind, the way you would close a program running in the background that you no longer need. Replace the old conversation with a new one that feels natural and peaceful. The old voice says, I am struggling financially. When will money finally arrive? The new voice says, I am connected to abundance. Opportunities and prosperity flow naturally into my life. The old voice says, they still have not contacted me. Maybe they do not care. The new voice says, I am loved. My relationships are genuine, secure, and meaningful. The old voice says, nothing has changed yet. What if this never improves? The new voice says, my body and mind are moving toward balance. I am becoming stronger and healthier every day. This is not something you do once and forget. You practice it throughout the day. Every time you catch yourself returning to the old identity, you make the shift again. And slowly, through repetition, the new inner voice becomes familiar. It becomes the natural background of your mind. Not because you forced it, not because you pretended, but because what you repeatedly choose becomes the state you naturally live from. The new inner conversation has been repeated enough times that it no longer feels forced. It begins to feel natural, and that feeling of naturalness is the evidence that you have truly moved into a different state of being. Let me share with you 3 powerful anchors that will help you remain rooted in your chosen state, especially during moments when the outside world tries to pull you back into old patterns. The first anchor is the feeling. Throughout your day, do not limit yourself to feeling the wish fulfilled only during meditation or your morning practice. Return to that feeling again and again, even if it is only for a few seconds. Every hour, if possible, pause for 30 seconds and reconnect with the feeling of already having what you desire. You do not need to close your eyes. You do not need to create a perfect environment. You do not need to step away from your daily activities. Simply stop for a moment and allow the feeling to return. Feel the confidence of someone who is already successful. Feel the peace of someone who is already loved. Feel the strength of someone who is already healthy. Feel the identity of the person who already possesses the thing they once wished for. Stay with that feeling briefly, then continue your day. This simple hourly return becomes your anchor, because when you consistently reconnect with your chosen state, your awareness cannot drift too far into the old identity. The biggest moments of drifting happen during long periods when you forget yourself completely and become absorbed in external circumstances. You spend hours reacting to what you see, what you hear, and what appears to be happening around you, until the old state quietly becomes your default again. The hourly return prevents that. Make it a habit. If necessary, create reminders until it becomes automatic. Every hour, return to the feeling. You will begin to notice how quickly this practice stabilizes your state and strengthens your awareness. The second anchor is gratitude, but not ordinary gratitude for random things. This is gratitude connected directly to your desire. Gratitude from the assumption that it is already yours. Instead of saying, thank you that this will come someday, say, thank you that this is already done. Thank you for the abundance flowing into my life. Thank you for the love I already experience. And thank you that my health is restored. The difference is subtle, but it changes everything. Why is gratitude such a powerful anchor? Because true gratitude cannot exist in the same space as lack. You cannot sincerely feel thankful for something you believe is completely absent. Real gratitude requires a sense of possession. It places you in the identity of the person who has already received. Gratitude naturally moves you into the state of having. Throughout your day, whenever your desire comes to mind, do not approach it with anxiety. Do not ask, has it happened yet? Do not search for evidence that it is coming. Instead, pause and feel a simple, genuine thank you. Thank you that this is already unfolding. Thank you that this is already mine. Thank you that everything is moving into alignment. Because the assumption of already having is the state itself. The third anchor is evening revision. Every night before your sleep practice, take a few minutes to review your day, not to criticize yourself, not to judge your mistakes, and not to feel guilty about the moments when you reacted from the old state. Instead, use imagination to transform those moments. Think about the situations where you lost your inner peace, the conversation that triggered doubt, the circumstance that made you question yourself, or the moment when an old belief suddenly returned. You already know which moments they were because they left an emotional impression on you. Now revise them. Replay those scenes in your imagination, but this time experience them from your desired state. If someone said something that affected you, imagine hearing those same words while remaining completely calm and secure in your assumption. See yourself responding as the person who knows their inner reality is already established. If you looked at your circumstances and felt fear, imagine seeing the same situation with confidence and certainty. If an old thought tried to pull you backward, imagine noticing it peacefully and returning to your chosen state without struggle. Revision serves two important purposes. First, it clears the emotional residue created throughout the day. Through imagination, you rewrite those experiences so that your consciousness ends the day aligned with the state you want to occupy. You do not carry old reactions into sleep. Second, revision is practice. Every time you imagine yourself remaining calm during a difficult moment, you are training your mind to respond differently. You are creating a new pattern. Then, when a similar situation appears in the future, you are more likely to naturally respond from the new state. Not because you forced yourself, not because you fought against the old pattern, but because you have practiced the new response enough times that it feels familiar. This three-anchor system, returning to the feeling throughout the day, living in gratitude, and revising your experiences before sleep, combined with your morning state practice, creates a complete foundation for dwelling in the wish fulfilled, not visiting it, living from it. Now let us talk about the challenge that causes many people to lose faith. It is not the first day. It is not the first week when everything feels exciting and possible. It is the second week, the third week, the month that slowly becomes 2 months, the moment when your desire has not yet appeared physically, and a quiet question begins to enter your mind. Am I doing something wrong? Is this really working? Is there something I am missing? This is the moment where your persistence is truly tested. I want you to understand what is really happening in that moment. It is not proof that your assumption is failing. It is the old state making one final attempt to regain your attention. But it does not always appear as obvious doubt. You have already learned how to recognize the obvious doubts and move beyond them. The more subtle ones are what challenge people the most. They appear as reasonable thoughts. They sound intelligent. They disguise themselves as logic, self-awareness, and being realistic. I am just trying to be honest with myself. I am only checking if this is actually working. I am simply looking at the facts. These thoughts do not seem harmful because they appear responsible. They feel like careful observation rather than doubt. And yes, the questions are real. The uncertainty is real. The absence of visible evidence is real. But there is something important you must understand about what you currently see. What you are observing in this moment is not the reflection of your current assumption. It is the reflection of an older assumption that has already been impressed upon your world. Your physical reality is always the last thing to change. Always. The external world does not transform instantly because consciousness has changed. Just as a seed planted beneath the soil needs time before it becomes visible, your inner shift requires time before it appears in physical form. The circumstances you see today were created by previous states of consciousness. They are the results of old beliefs, old expectations, and old assumptions that were active before you changed direction. They are not new information, they are history. When you look at your current circumstances and allow them to create doubt, you are allowing the past to control the present. You are allowing an old version of yourself to influence the person you are choosing to become. The moment evidence seems to contradict your assumption, remember this: the echo has not yet caught up with the voice. You have already changed the voice. You have already chosen a new room. The physical reflection is simply catching up with the new position you have taken internally. Your responsibility is not to force the echo to arrive faster. Your responsibility is to remain in the new room long enough for the reflection to appear. Stay there. Remain faithful. Continue being the person who already knows. There is a word that describes this state of complete inner stability: Sabbath. In its deepest meaning, Sabbath is not only a day on the calendar, it is a state of consciousness. It is the peaceful rest that comes after the work has already been completed. It is the quiet certainty of someone who has planted the seed and knows the harvest is inevitable. This is the feeling of someone who has imagined their desire, accepted it internally, experienced it as real, and then released the anxious need to constantly check. You do not abandon the desire. You do not stop caring. You simply rest in the knowing that it is already done. You no longer wake up wondering when it will happen. You no longer analyze every detail looking for proof. You no longer measure every moment against what has not yet appeared. Instead, you move through life as the person who already possesses the identity you desire. Just as naturally as you know your own name, your own face, and your own story, you begin to know yourself as the person who has already entered that reality. When your desire stops feeling like something extraordinary that you are waiting for and begins to feel normal, you have entered this state of rest. This naturalness is the sign. When something feels ordinary, familiar, and completely accepted, there is no longer inner resistance. There is no longer a conflict between the person you want to be and the person you believe yourself to be. You are no longer divided between two identities. You are fully established in the chosen state. And consciousness that is fully occupied by a state, without resistance or contradiction, must eventually express that state in physical form. That is the principle. That is the law. So remember this. Remaining in the state does not mean becoming perfect. This is important. Because many people who are deeply committed to their growth make the mistake of trying to practice perfectly. Then, when they have a moment of doubt or fear, they judge themselves and believe they have ruined everything.